I'm James Rule. Welcome to the Lonely Leader podcast, where we help existing and aspiring leaders find clarity, build resilience, drive performance, and enhance fulfilment. You'll have heard me say many times that the focus of our work at The Lonely Leader is to help you find clarity, to help you build your resilience, to drive your personal and professional performance, and ultimately to enhance your level of fulfillment. And each and every episode is designed to give you the material and the insights to do just that. There are tactical, strategic suggestions in every episode, as there will be in this one, to take control of that process. And equally, I like to highlight the pitfalls, the roadblocks, if you will, that will compromise your ability to do that. And that brings us to the focus of today, the need to tap into the power of self-validation. Now, where am I going with this? Well, as with all of the episodes, I look for themes and patterns that I see in the clients I work with, in the individual leaders and their wider leadership teams. And for most of us, however grounded we think we are, however internally focused we are overly dependent on external validation. We get disproportionately high with praise and external validation, and we get disproportionately low when we receive criticism from external sources. Now, as I'll explain in this episode, there's nothing wrong with embracing external validation, but it can't be the predominant driver of your self-worth. And I heard a quote once which really encapsulates this. If your self-worth is outsourced, your peace will always be rented. If your self-worth is outsourced, your peace will always be rented. Self-validation is essential. We have to tap into that. I'll explain in this episode why I believe that's so important. And as I said at the start, I will also share some simple, actionable takeaways you can start implementing today to ensure you do truly tap into and embrace the power of self-validation. As I've already alluded to, external validation is not bad. And we should never shy away from expressing gratitude and appreciation when somebody pays us a compliment, whether that's in our professional role or in our personal life. But what we're exploring today is ensuring that that doesn't become the primary driver of our self-worth. For those of you that are parents, you will see this wrestle taking place as your children grow, that they are seeking validation from their teachers, they are seeking validation from you, and when they're getting praise, they're happy. If they're not getting that validation and praise, they start to think they're not doing the right thing. They start to think they're failing, and we have to guide them to have the confidence to move forward and not make their sense of worth and their mindset and their emotional state purely dependent on external feedback. Now, that is exactly the same for us as adults. We do not want to get into a space where if people are praising me, telling me I'm doing a good job, I'm happy. If it's silent, if I'm not getting regular feedback, there must be a problem, I'm not doing the right thing. Those internal narratives I see just as much in my own daughters as I do in external leaders. It's how we're wired. It's how our software, if you will, within our brains is set up. So it's important to take control of that software, appreciate external validation, but don't make it our primary source of where we determine our worth. I believe leaders are particularly vulnerable to this. Why? Well, because you're in such a visible position. People like to constantly quantify the impact, the level of performance that you are bringing. You are surrounded by KPIs, targets, objectives that have to be hit, and therefore you're constantly being measured against criteria. So that almost fuels this belief that that's where our worth comes from. That's where the external validation becomes so dominant in our thought process. Now, of course, we're not going to move away from the importance of KPIs and objectives. Yes, you will have to hit them. But as you already know, if we make that a determinant of how we feel and our sense of worth, it's fleeting. When you hit a target, invariably, your boss, your board, your shareholders, they push the target on. I see this a lot in sales teams. They have a great year. Congratulations. Now we're going to ask you to deliver another 10% or another 5%. And then you have another great year and hit that. Oh, we'll keep stretching and moving. So the promotion you get, right, I've arrived. No, as soon as you step into the promotion, there's a new set of demands. So we know that we can't rely on that external validation to satisfy us for long. It is fleeting. But for leaders, that's the context, that's the caveat. I understand why this is more prevalent, because you feel that pressure to deliver, to make sure your boss, your board, your shareholder group are happy with your performance. So there's almost a contradiction here. I'm saying look within, and I maintain that. Self-validation is where the power is going to come from, where your quantum leaps in performance will come from. Naturally, there will always be a degree of external validation. You have to embrace that, but it's not the predominant driver. It's not where you seek your self-worth. At this juncture, I just want to make a nod towards comparison. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. And that is so true. Never more so, I don't believe, than in modern day society. The proliferation now of social media, the phone that is in practically every adult's hand around the world, means that we are in a constant state of comparison, whether that's professionally, looking at people in our space, in our sector. Look at what they're doing, look at the title they've got, look at the platform they've got, look at the brand, look at the number of followers, look at their influence, whether that's pivoting into their personal lives or friends within our social circle. Look at the holidays they go on, look at the partners they've got, look at the activities that their children are achieving in. I don't want to go too deep on this, but it is something I spend a lot of time on with individuals and wider groups. We are never comparing apples with apples. Invariably, people's social media channels are their highlight reels. Professional sportsmen and women produce those to secure new contracts, etc. It's all their best interactions in the game. They would not put on every time they've missed a tackle, every time they dropped a ball, every time they missed an open goal. Why would you do that? And we all know that, and yet we're blinded to it when it comes to how we feel. We look at stuff and say, look at their life, but it's the top 1, 2, 3, or 4%. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm on a rant about this, but this is so damaging to people's mindset and their mental health at a more serious level. Anybody with children will be wrestling this very issue, and the damage that is being done to young minds and their emotional development is cataclysmic, in my opinion. That damage is equally prevalent with so many adults. Yes, you've got more maturity and more emotional control than young people that have been exposed to it, but it still damages you. It still knocks you off track. It still drains your energy. And it all sits under this banner of external validation, because we're used to looking out. It's distracting us from our mission. It's distracting us from putting the best of our energy into executing our strategy at work, our fitness campaign at home, our level of presence with our husband or wife or with our children or friendship group or extended family. It's just compromising our very sense of the best version of us and bringing that to the fore more and more. So this is almost an intervention, if you will, to say, please pull back from that external validation, bring your focus back to self-validation. That brings you back almost to your center. There is absolutely nothing wrong with admiring other people, to say, wow, look how well they've done. Look at the progress they are making. There's nothing wrong with approaching people like that and learning from them, or studying them from a distance if you don't know them personally. Nobody's got all the answers to every facet of their life, and there's nothing wrong with using comparison and external validation to support our own growth and development, to learn from those that have walked the path ahead of us. But we have to have the discipline to embrace it with that mindset, rather than, oh, look what they're doing compared to me. I'm a failure. I'm not going to achieve. We have to have that growth mindset and say, wow, well, I'm not there yet, but I can work towards that. And there's proof of concept. There's somebody else over there that is achieving it. And I really embrace that. And again, I often say that being a dad is my most important job, and the leadership development that I learn from my children is so influential in my business and working with clients. But it's so pertinent. My girls have become passionate about hip hop and dance. They're also very into their swimming. And I'll always say to them, when you first started this process, when you first dropped in a pool, could you swim the butterfly stroke? No. Could you dance with the rhythm and the coordination and the synchronicity in the hip hop routines that you're doing? Absolutely not. How have you improved? You worked at it. And I think that is always a really important pivot back when we're talking about external validation. It gives you an opportunity to see what is possible, but then you look within and you take control about how you can move forward and how you can progress to move to that position. As with every episode, I want to start moving towards some practical implications here, because what does self-validation actually look like? It's important to stress it's not just you sitting there patting yourself, the proverbial pat on the back, saying, I'm wonderful, blindly positive about everything. It's not about ego. It's about being much more grounded, that I know who I am, I know what I value, I know what I'm working towards, I know where I'm growing, I know where I still have potential to grow. It's a lot more, for want of a better word, grounded, and it's a lot more sustainable. Yes, you're aware of that external validation, you're aware of criticism, you're aware of praise, but as we said at the start of the episode, you don't get too high with the praise, you don't get too low with the criticism. You're always looking beyond it to say, what does this mean? What can I learn from it? And so here are a series of key steps that I believe will help you lean into this process of self-validation. So the first tip is build an internal scorecard. I love the concept of a scorecard because it gives us some feedback. It allows us to cut through all our thoughts, all that noise, and say, am I moving forward? Am I making progress? So you're moving away from questions like, what did they think? Ooh, how did they perceive that? Did I impress that person? Are they recognizing me? Do I look successful to them? All those questions that push us into external validation, and we start to bring it back with questions such as, did I act in alignment with my values? Did I show courage when courage was required? Did I prepare properly? Did I lead to the best of my ability? Did I learn something? These are questions that make us look within. And those answers you can journal, you can reflect on, you can just sit and play them over in your mind. But you are bringing the focus internally as opposed to that external focus. The next tip is notice when comparison is creeping in and examine it. We're not robots. We're all going to be exposed to this, and it's human nature that we drift into comparison. But the first thing is to become consciously aware of it and ask yourself questions like, what's triggering this? What environments, what sources trigger this? Does it tend to be when you're on a certain platform in a certain place? That's the first step of the awareness. And then once you say, well, what am I feeling in this? Is it envy? Is it jealousy? Is it anger? Or is it inspiration and motivation? Let's establish what this comparison is doing to us. Is it moving us towards growth and development, as we said earlier? Wow, I admire this person, let me learn more about what they do. Or is it dragging us down, putting us in a state where we compromise our growth and development? And what is driving it? Well, those emotions, establish that. And then what is it revealing? Often it's an insecurity that you need to work through. The emotional response, the envy, the anger, it's linked back to an insecurity. Perhaps it's revealing a value that you know you should be embracing, but you've drifted away from, and you need to start realigning with that particular value. Perhaps it's because it's pushing and probing an ambition that you've got for yourself, but you're not taking the action to move forward. That's often the case. We see someone excelling in a space, and actually, the real emotion is frustration. Why? Because you know you should be doing more in that space as well. Perhaps it's how they're operating as a partner. Perhaps it's how they're developing their health and fitness. Perhaps it's how they're growing a business. Rather than allow those negative emotions to just sit and fester, say, well, why am I frustrated? It's because I'm not doing as much as I should. Let me step in. Let me do more in that area. Let me take control and be proactive. The third tip links back into the first one, really, about that scorecard concept, and it's start validating your own progress. Rather than waiting for people external to you to say, good job, well done, you're on track, Answer that for yourself. Nobody knows how you are performing, the energy you are bringing, the productivity you are delivering better than you. You know when you're drifting, when you're cruising, when you're on autopilot, and you also know when you are bringing the best version of you and delivering at the best of your ability. So if you need some journaling type prompts that you can reflect on, what did I handle well today or this week if you're doing a review at the end of the week? Where have I grown? Where have I developed? What am I proud of? Very, very powerful question to ask yourself. What did I do that was uncomfortable but necessary? What am I proud of pushing through? So that can be around that discomfort. What standard did I uphold today? Don't wait for somebody else to tell you because they may not even be aware of it. People can't be on your shoulder every minute of the day, but you know what you're proud of. You know where you grew. You know where you stepped up and showed courage. So remind yourself of that. Anchor that in. Even when all around you is chaotic, challenging, as the world is at the minute, there's a lot of challenge and adversity. Everybody's looking to their own challenges and their own issues. They haven't necessarily got the bandwidth, the time, or the energy to be constantly praising and externally validating you. Look within. Answer those questions. You're the best person to ask them and the only person that can answer them with 100% accuracy. The fourth tip is separate feedback from identity. I've done a lot of episodes about giving and taking feedback. It's crucial. It can really enhance the performance of an individual or team and also derail it. And I think when it just comes to feedback, you have to see it as a learning opportunity. You have to separate your identity. Just because you get negative feedback doesn't mean you're a bad person, a bad professional, and you're doomed to failure. It means you are being presented with information that you can learn from. I always anchor this in with a sporting analogy. If you imagine a sports team, maybe have 30 to 40 fixtures every season, you might be the MVP, the man of the match in one game, and you might have the worst game of your career the next game. You've not changed as a person, your identity hasn't changed, but your performance has fluctuated. And therefore, we have to embrace the fact that feedback, particularly constructive criticism, is all about how we are aware of where we are and how we develop, learn from it, and move forward. That is not your identity. That is a reflection on your performance. It's important to make that separation and to look within again and say, okay, external validation tells me that performance wasn't great. What do I think? I'm inclined to agree. I know that wasn't my best performance. And we're back into the control the controllables mindset of, right, what am I going to do about it? And I think last but not least, reduce your exposure to noisy validation loops. We know social media has inherent benefits. It can connect us. It can drive our business. It can speed up communication, etc. But on the flip side, we also are all too aware of the negatives. And one of the biggest negatives is it locks you in that spiral of seeking external validation, comparison, as I've alluded to. So what do we need to do? Well, less checking, less scanning, less constantly going back to it with that addictive, oh, what's happening? Let me refresh, let me check, because it is just destroying our mindset, our productivity, our energy. And we just need to be aware of that. When we can put our devices to one side and focus on our task in hand, whether that's being fully present with a loved one, in a restaurant. How often do you walk in now, look around and see couples or families, everybody's down on their own device? You may as well just got a takeaway and sat in the car park because there is no interaction. So let's be aware of these validation loops. Let's use them rather than let them use us. Yes, there's nothing wrong with having a release and then an energetic break. Just let's check out what's going on in the world if it serves you and enhances your energy. But if it is draining you and pushing you into that external validation and the curse of comparison, then we just need to be aware of it and take control back, reduce your exposure to those environments, those platforms. I hope this resonates. I hope it makes sense, as I'm always cautious when I'm working with groups and individuals, and particularly if this is the first time you've ever listened to me on the podcast. There is zero judgment, zero patronization. I know how hard it is to step away from external validation and focus more on self-validation. I'm no different to you. I have those same wrestles. I know how easy it is to drift into comparison, and I know the challenges of social media platforms all too well. I am not immune to any of that. And I would never say that we shouldn't embrace and respect and be grateful for praise and encouragement. That's wonderful when it comes. but we all know it fluctuates. We can't rely on that for reasons we've touched on. People have their own pressures, their own stresses. They're not thinking, how can I praise Andy or how can I praise Samantha today? It's fluctuation. But self-validation is a constant. We can find time every day to look at those areas that I've touched on, to sit with a journal and reflect on some of those questions. Self-validation can be a constant. It can be a place we recenter ourselves and we take strength and drive right back where we started the episode, enhance our clarity, driving our performance, building our resilience, and ultimately enhancing our level of fulfillment. That's the power of it, because it is always available. You can turn on the process of self-validation at any moment you wish. You are not reliant on it, and it is not going to fluctuate in the same way external validation does. You can rely on your ability to say, I'm just going to sit with a cup of coffee, open my journal, and sense check where I am and look within and take some self-validation of the progress I'm making. If you check out the show notes, you'll find a link to my weekly newsletter, the Leadership Accelerator. Please do sign up to that. One of the things you'll get as a thank you from me when you sign up is a little PDF tip sheet about tackling imposter syndrome. And obviously the benefit of focusing on self-validation is all too prevalent to combating that notion of being an imposter that so many of my clients express to me that they wrestle with at some time or other. Now, within the Leadership Accelerator, I often drop in leadership challenges, and I'll leave you with just a simple challenge at the end of this episode as well. So I'd like you to think about one area of your life, personal life, or your professional role where you are relying too heavily on external validation. Identifying it is a first and crucial step. Where are you overly dependent on external validation? Secondly, I'd like you to think about one comparison that you are currently engaged in that is draining your joy, eroding your confidence. I'm sure as I say that out loud, you can think of something. Yeah, I keep looking at that individual. I keep checking out their Instagram. I keep looking at them on LinkedIn, and it is doing exactly that. It's not inspiring me to drive and grow and develop. It's actually draining my energy and robbing me of my joy. Again, identifying it is crucial, because we stop drifting. We start to become aware of where we are, and we take action. And then last but not least, I'd like you just to note down 3 things that you respect about yourself right now. 3 things that you're like, yeah, I'm proud of that. I'm pleased with how I'm operating. Perhaps it'll take you into your personal life. Perhaps it'll take you into your professional life. But we're so used to waiting for that external validation. Look within. Give yourself that feedback. Give yourself that positive reinforcement. I'm proud of what I'm doing here. I'm pleased of how I'm showing up there. Log that. Those 3 questions I think are quite powerful, because they will stimulate thoughts and they will naturally stimulate follow-on actions. Once you start to identify what's really draining you in that comparison arena, you'll ideally stop or at least restrict it. Once you start to recognize where you are relying too heavily on external validation, again, you'll make changes. So the quality of our questions are so important to drive our continued growth and development. And I hope I've given you a suite of questions today that will allow you to take back the power of self-validation. Leadership on the outside always starts within. This is a great way to go within and really drive your impact, drive your performance forward. And as I always like to close with, I wish you the very best of luck with your continued journey of growth and development. Thanks for listening to the Lonely Leader podcast. I'd be very grateful if you could share and follow if the content resonates. And if you're looking for additional free resource to support your continued growth and development, then please do check out our social media and website details in the show notes. Remember, quality leadership on the outside must always start within.